solve the equation 2y over 11 minus 6 over 11 equals y over 7. So first thing we want to do is find the least common denominator. That means the first time that the denominators line up. So for this problem, we have 11 and 7. We want to know when's the first multiple that they'll line up. I'm going to start listing out some multiples of 11. 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, 66, 77. Now 77 is definitely divisible by 7. So now I'm going to list out the multiples of 7. 7, 14. I could keep going, but none of these earlier multiples are going to be divisible by 7 until we get to 77. So if I were to list out all the multiples of 7, I would find that the first time that these line up is 77. So when those line up, we're going to multiply by that number. Which in this case is 77. What this is going to do is it's going to clear out the fractions in the equation. So if I multiply by 77 to this whole equation, after I actually multiply it, I want to distribute that number to each of these fractions. And that means multiplying it by each one. So I'm going to write 77 over 1 with each fraction. Okay. And then, in order to simplify this a little bit, and it is going to simplify, I'm going to rewrite each of these fractions so that these denominators are going to cancel out. What I mean by that, I'm going to write 77 over 11 times 2y. We'll go ahead and put the 2y in parentheses, minus 77 over 11 times 6 equals 77 over 7 times y. The reason I did that rewriting with moving this denominator under the 77 for each of these fractions is now these are going to divide really easily. So now I can actually divide these fractions and I should get whole numbers. So 77 over 11 is 7 times 2y minus 77 over 11 is 7 again times 6 equals 77 over 7. If I divide those two, I get the number 11. So multiplying by the least common denominator, what that does is it ends up clearing the fractions out of the equation so that we have an easier equation to work with. The reason we choose the least common denominator, the least common multiple, is that that's the smallest number for which all the fractions are going to get cleared out. And now we have kind of a normal equation to solve. So 7 times 2y is 14y, minus 7 times 6 is 42, equals 11 times y, which is 11y. So right now our last step is just to solve. Okay, and to solve this equation, since I have y's on both sides, I'm going to need to move some of the y's. So since I have y's and numbers on the left side, I'm going to move the 14y to the other side. Then I get negative 42, because those cancel out, equals negative 3y. Okay, and then last step to solve, divide by negative 3. And that negative 42 over negative 3 is 14. So we get y equals 14. Just to give a little more practice with least common denominators or least common multiples, let's say that example 1, the numbers 4, 7, and 14 showed up in the denominators, and we wanted to try to clear out those denominators of the fractions. Using the same method, we just start listing out the multiples. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and then of 7 as well. So 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, and then of 14, 14, and 28. And we can see now that 7 and 14 line up at 28, but we don't have enough multiples of 4 written. So let's write a couple more. So 24, 28. Yes, those do line up at 28. So for these numbers, 4, 7, and 14, our least common denominator that we would multiply by would be 28 to clear out all the fractions. What about this example 2? Let's say our denominators were 2, 4, and 8, and we want to try to clear out those denominators. Well, then we'd do the same thing. We'd start listing out multiples: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then of the 4, so 4, 8, 12, we could keep going. And then of the 8, 8, 16, we could keep going, but you might see that all of these already have 8 as a shared multiple when we list out their multiples this way. So that means that the least common denominator is 8.